So last year, me and my pals made a MLS unpopular opinion video, and it was fun. But I figured because the World Cup is right around the corner, it's time to make a USMNT edition of some unpopular opinions.
With me today, I got three of the GOATs. Yank Report, It's Called Soccer, and Anthony LaRosa. Gentlemen, let's hear some hot takes.
If Darlington Nagbe had played for the U.S. men's national team throughout this cycle, the U.S. would have finished top in their group. The issues were a very young team, a lot of inexperience, and struggles at the midfield position. If you think about the first window of World Cup qualifying and the first game of World Cup qualifying, Yunus Musah was out injured and still did not have a lot of experience with the group. We played an El Salvadorian squad, which was not very good, but we ended up tying that game largely because of our lack of cohesion in midfield. I think if you bring on a player like Darlington Nagbe, a player that throughout his career has just been unbelievable at ball retention in midfield and has always just made really good decisions, he's a player that some of the younger players could have just passed the ball to, and he could have held on to things and slowed things down in the midfield and allowed some of our younger, less experienced players to get into the mix and to really show what they can do. Instead, he started Brendan Aronson in the midfield. That midfield got overrun, and the U.S. struggled to create chances and ended up getting a 0-0 draw. The next game was against Canada, and we had a similar situation where the U.S. came out and were really incohesive. We started Sebastian Lletget and we started Kellen Acosta as eights in the midfield. That tandem did not do a very good job at ball progression at all. Eventually in that game, we have a moment where Alphonso Davies picks up the ball on the left flank. He races down the left flank, puts a pass into the middle, a goal is scored, and the rest is history. Early on in World Cup qualifying, the game against El Salvador, the game against Canada, and the game against Panama in particular, had we had Darlington Nagbe in that midfield, I think the U.S. could have gotten a lot more points out of those games, a lot better outcomes. Now, I do believe that eventually the MMA midfield would have won out. I think that Yunus Musah's dynamism and Weston McKennie's ability to be one of the best players in the player pool whenever he's on his day would have eventually won out. I think had he been in this group from the very beginning, we would have saw a very different World Cup qualifying. That is my hot take. Now I'm worried about the comment section.
On February 2nd, 2022, the USMNT took on Honduras in St. Paul, Minnesota for a CONCACAF World Cup qualifier. The game shattered the record for coldest match in USMNT history, with temperature at kickoff being 2 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill of -10. The U.S. Soccer Federation faced heavy criticism for the decision to play a World Cup qualifier in Minnesota in the middle of winter, as the extreme temperatures produced dangerous conditions for all that were involved.
And I have no problem with it. In fact, I love the decision to play a World Cup qualifier in Minnesota in February. Oh, we're the United States. We have the best facilities in the world, and we shouldn't have to rely on cheap tactics to beat a warm country. Dude, give me a break. The U.S. has been subjected to playing on plenty of crap fields during CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. But you know what? I'm not complaining about it because I understand that's just part of it. That's part of the challenge in playing in this region. And I refuse to use tough conditions as an excuse for a poor result. Can we just be honest with ourselves? Like, I know we want the USMNT to look like Joga Bonita Brazil playing beautiful soccer, but a lot of times in CONCACAF, we're not exactly dealing with technical masterclasses here. No, these are gritty, hard-fought games played on bad fields with bad refs. And sometimes you just gotta be able to grind out a result. So why can't we show that not only can we take it, we could also dish it too? I know, 2 of your players did get hypothermia. I feel bad about that, but it's like, sorry. You know, next time put on more layers, grab some more hand warmers. I mean, come on, they play in this kind of weather all the time in American football, and I've never once heard a fan say, oh, it's too cold, these players shouldn't be playing. You know why? Because they signed up for it. And I believe we should stop babying our soccer players, because they can handle it too.
Michael Bradley should have been the connecting veteran between the last generation and this generation of incredibly talented players. Now, I say that not because of the way that he ended his US team career in Trinidad and Tobago with some really poor comments after the match, but if you just think about the 10 years plus of his US career before that moment, Michael Bradley was tantamount. He was critical. He was one of our most important players in some of the biggest moments of the US men's national team, getting us huge results and captaining our way through World Cups and World Cup qualifying. Now, the US does not have any veteran leadership today. DeAndre Yedlin is going to be the only player on this World Cup roster with any World Cup experience. So I think we could have been in a much better position as a team if Michael Bradley was the connecting player between the last generation and this current one.
Greg Berhalter has been okay. As in, not the worst USMNT manager of all time, like a lot of this fan base seems to believe. I swear, it's like you guys just gloss over the Manfred Shellshite era of the USMNT and pretend like it never happened. Listen, I got my issues with Berhalter, okay? I don't love all of his player selections, and I think at times he's a bit rigid with his system, preaching verticality and whatnot. But my God, he has been dealt a tough hand with all of these injuries. I mean, I think most of the USMNT fan base would agree that the five guys of Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, and Serginho Dest, like those five should be lock-in starters for the USMNT. And yet those five guys have played together just once under Greg Berhalter, and this is due mostly to nagging, reoccurring injuries. Then it becomes, okay, does Greg call up the guys that have never or barely played for him and expect them to shine at the World Cup with little preparation? Or does he call up the guys that he knows, the guys that he's seen, the guys that he trusts? And we could be mad at him, we could not like him, but we can't ignore his record. 2 trophies, qualified for the World Cup, fastest US manager to 25 wins, and the best winning percentage of any USMNT manager. That's not too shabby. It feels like people are cementing his legacy as someone who wasted the potential for this group, and I don't think that's right. I'd rather see his potential be known as the guy that helped get this country and this team back on their feet. Is he perfect? Hell no. But before I can crucify him, I gotta see how he performs on the final exam, aka the World Cup.
The current crop of USMNT players are overrated. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this team. I've got the new Pulisic jersey and my golden boy Aronson, so don't tell me I'm not a fan, but let's be honest. What we've seen so far in World Cup qualifying and beyond hasn't been the best. I'm where a lot of you will point the finger at Greg Berhalter, which I think that's a fair point, but sometimes it's also the player's fault. Obviously, it's easy to look at one guy here. Christian Pulisic, he's a prime example. He's at Chelsea, one of the biggest clubs in England, and he can't get consistent minutes. You can say it's Thomas Tuchel who doesn't like him, but now you got a new head coach, and it's the same way. Like Thierry Henry said, and I quote, "How many managers are not going to trust you? At one point, it's going to have to be you. You have to show something." And I kind of want to flip that on to the USMNT players as well. Instead of blaming other people, maybe it's time to admit that our guys aren't quite ready yet to do what we all want them to. Right now, I think we're expecting too much out of a group of guys that are still finding their way. I look at those 2 friendlies the USA played last, and I just can't help to think that our team isn't as great as I first thought. With Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams holding their own regularly in the Premier League, I do have hope. But I can't quite say the same for some of the other guys in the pool like Chris Richards, Ricardo Pepi, Serginho Dest, and even Pulisic for that matter. I don't know if they're at the same level that some people in the community think they're at. Right now, I think the current crop of USMNT players are overrated.
USMNT unpopular opinions. What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? What are your unpopular opinions? Let me know. And thank you for watching.